Hello, everyone, and welcome to Legal Aid for Working Albertans, What You Need to Know. My name is Andy Gregory. I'm the Director of Communications for Legal Aid Alberta, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. I want to open today by sharing two short stories with you. The first is about a woman called Diane. Before Legal Aid Alberta, Diane faced certain imprisonment in her home country in East Africa, where anyone is suspected of being anything other than heterosexual is at risk of being jailed. The police will capture you and torture you, Diane explained to us. The government had even set up a phone line for people to call and report someone they suspected is LGBTQ. Legal aid lawyers helped Diane claim refugee status. Before legal aid, Diane felt scared and hopeless. And after, she was able to start a new life in Canada, apply for jobs, volunteer, and is free to be herself. I also want you to know about Alana. Before Legal Aid Alberta, Alana was facing an endless cycle of crime and drugs. I didn't have a lot of life left in me, she said. They didn't know from one week to the next if I'd be dead or alive. It was legal aid lawyers that helped Alana deal with her criminal charges and get on with her life. Before legal aid, she was in a spiral. And after, she got a job and a college education. Every year in Alberta, there are thousands upon thousands of stories just like these ones. People in legal crisis. Access to affordable legal aid services makes a significant difference in their ability to protect their rights and resolve their issues. Starting on April 1, the province of Alberta has increased Legal Aid Alberta's financial eligibility guidelines. This means we can help more people like Alana and Diane deal with criminal charges, family law issues, or an immigration claim. Individuals making up to $30,000 gross per year may be eligible for legal aid services. It's an increase from the previous cap of $24,456. And that's what brings us here today. With more Albertans eligible for legal aid help, we've been getting a lot of questions. You might be here for yourself. You might be here for someone who you know who's in legal trouble or might be soon. Or you may be from a partner public service agency who, like us, is on the front lines helping Albertans in crisis. Hospitals, treatment centers, legal groups, shelters, community associations, neighborhood groups. Whoever you are and whatever your motivation is to be here, we welcome you and we hope you walk away with a more clear picture of what legal aid does, who we serve, and the process and how the process works in case you or someone you know needs to apply for a legal aid lawyer. So we have a lot of ground to cover today. I want to start by respectfully acknowledging that we are situated on the ancestral and traditional territory of many peoples, presently subject to Treaties 6, 7, and 8, namely the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, Siksika, the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, Stoney Nakoda, Tsuut'ina, and the Métis people of Alberta. In an act of reconciliation and gratitude, we acknowledge that all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. So today's session is going to be 1 hour. In the first half, we'll dive into all of those questions that you have about legal aid. Who do we help? Why is legal aid important? How do I apply? Who's my lawyer? And the second half will be dedicated to your questions. To ask a question, you want to click on the Q&A button in Teams. No one else will be able to see the question but us. We do have a very large audience with us today from all across Alberta, so we may not be able to get all of your questions. We will do our best and appreciate your understanding. A recording of the webinar will be posted to the Legal Aid Alberta website in the coming days, and a link will be sent to everyone who signed up. And please keep in mind that today's session is intended to focus on the process and requirements for applying for full-scale legal aid representation. That is, you need a lawyer to represent you for potentially a long stretch, such as a trial. Legal aid does provide a number of brief, free legal services to Albertans, regardless of your income. These include advice from a duty counsel lawyer at the courthouse, a lawyer to represent you at a bail hearing, a lawyer over the phone if you're in police custody, and a lawyer to help you with an emergency protection order to escape an abuser. If there's time, we'll try to recap these services as well at the end, or you can ask questions about these too. We have a ton of information on our website about all legal aid services, so I encourage you to go there to find out more. So let's get started. Criminal defense is a major part of what we do at Legal Aid. About 80% of legal aid files involve criminal matters. Cameron Mitchell is here, a staff lawyer in our criminal defense practice, and he's a very familiar face at the Edmonton Courthouse. Cameron's here to discuss your legal rights, what happens when someone's charged with a crime, and the different ways that Legal Aid Alberta can help. Cam, thanks for being here today.
Thank you a lot for having me.
Okay, first tell us about you. What's your role at Legal Aid Alberta and how long have you been practicing law?
Sure. So I've been practicing law for about 10 years now, 2 of those with Legal Aid. And yeah, what I'm doing right now is I'm a criminal duty counsel lawyer. So I'm quite literally the first line of defense for people that are charged with crimes. So I'm quite often dealing with people that are in custody. They might need help with something like a bail hearing, but I also deal with a lot of people out of custody. So they show up first time in court, they don't really know what's going on, and I can help them sort of walk through the process. Sometimes I help out with resolution, maybe a guilty plea, things like that. And then ultimately, if it's a file that can't be resolved, I can also sort of start the process to get them applied with legal aid for a trial lawyer.
When people come to you at the courthouse, what sorts of legal issues are they typically facing?
Oh, honestly, it can be all sorts. Everything from sort of small petty thefts all the way up to very serious assault-related charges. So it's a little bit of everything. And I get to see a really broad spectrum of people. So people sort of think that the individual that gets caught up in the criminal justice system, maybe it's somebody who's low income, unemployed, maybe homeless. And yeah, I help out a lot of those people, but I also help out a lot of the sort of traditional everyday Albertan. So I see a lot of sort of young kids in there, first time charged, maybe they're a little bit confused. I see people that end up in there, maybe they've been in a long-term relationship, there's a domestic violence. I see a lot of people in there with that. So I see a very broad spectrum, a lot of different people, and I get to help out a lot of different people on any given day.
Thanks for sharing that, Cam. We know that legal trouble can and does happen to anyone, regardless of socioeconomic status. So it's important that people don't get the wrong idea about the type of people we help. So thanks for that. You're an experienced lawyer, and you've not only worked on the front lines, but also represented people in major cases. So I want to talk to you about the importance of legal aid representation. Why is representation critical, and what are the risks of self-representation?
So yes, I've been doing this for some time and represent people charged with a variety of different cases. Now, I have seen people that have gone to trial on criminal matters without a lawyer, and I have seen those same people go to jail. It can be a very scary thing to have to represent yourself on criminal charges and do everything alone. The law is complicated and it's not easy. So I'm really lucky now in getting to work at Legal Aid and help out sort of as many different people as possible to ensure that those sort of horror stories don't happen, that people do have a lawyer when they need them. Because like I said, it is scary, but at Legal Aid, part of our job is to take some of that fear away, show that there's somebody on your side fighting for you. And I literally get to do that every day of my working life in court. So that part of my job is pretty awesome.
What can someone expect, Cam, when they do come up to you in court and you might be the first person they see in the justice system? What is that experience like with duty counsel? And then what does happen if someone needs or wants to go to trial?
Yeah, so we have a really robust duty counsel program in Alberta. So anybody that shows up for their first, second sort of appearance on a matter, there is going to be a duty counsel in that courtroom to help them. So what I do is I can help walk the people through the process. So let them know sort of what to expect coming up with the next few appearances. I can also be the conduit with the Crown, have some negotiation discussions, figure out if a file is resolvable. That could be everything from the Crown outright withdrawing a charge to maybe there's some sort of guilty plea. But I can help out with all of that. Now, if I've sort of exhausted all of my resources, this doesn't look like it's going to be resolvable, this is something that's going to go to trial, I can also help out with a legal aid application. And what that application is about is that's helping somebody who has a criminal matter apply for legal aid to get a lawyer who will ultimately help them with a trial.
Thanks so much, Cameron. When legal trouble
Thank you.
happens, people are under extreme stress and overwhelm, as you know. Legal Aid has a dedicated and very well trained team to take the call and help you determine if you do qualify for legal aid. So I want to go to Melody Schramm now from our client services team, and she's here to give us some insight into the client intake and the application process. Thanks for being here, Melody. Okay, so let's start with telling us a little bit about you. What's your role at Legal Aid and how long have you been with Legal Aid Alberta?
So as Andy said, I'm the senior manager for client intake, and I've been with Legal Aid for 28 years. As you can tell, when I started at Legal Aid, I've been here for the majority of my career. I started in the Wetaskiwin office and progressed to the Edmonton office, and I manage a dedicated team of contact center intake officers. So
That's great. Thanks, Melody. The contact center is often the first point of contact for someone in Alberta who needs legal help. So give us a little bit insight about your team and the services that you provide.
Sure. So intake applications for legal aid are done over the phone by calling our contact center. And we're open Monday to Friday from 8:15 to 4:15, and we're closed on statutory holidays. The number is on our website. Currently, we have 70 team members that assist in completing the intake applications. They are what we call our frontline staff. They are the caller's first point of contact in the process. So the team is trained and supported to handle client call situations. We realize that when a caller contacts us, as you said, Andy, it's not at their best time of life. They're very vulnerable. So our team will never show judgment, and we're there to actually assist in the legal system for the intake perspective. We always strive to make the callers feel listened to and want to ensure that next steps are understood by the callers.
So what's it like when someone reaches an intake officer and they're ready to apply? Walk us through the process.
Okay, so when they call into the contact center, they will be presented with different phone queues to go into. Just as to note, any youth callers or callers in custody are given the highest priority in the phone queues. So then a team member will start the application process by asking certain questions about the caller's financial information and legal issue. From that information, when it's gathered, the determination will be made regarding the eligibility. And then the team member again will advise the caller of the process and communicate next steps.
Everyone has a unique situation and a different case. So without getting too complicated, can you talk us through how eligibility is determined for legal aid?
Sure. So with eligibility with legal aid, we have to look at both financial and service eligibility. So the financial and service eligibility are rules that have been established by the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General. So for financial, we'll take financial eligibility first. The caller will be asked what their income's been for the last 30 days, for the last 12 months, and what type of assets they may own. So that will start then to determine the financial end of it. For service eligibility, and we're talking criminal, we look at what the charges are and if they're covered by the rules that have been established. So for some charges, we'll cover them. Again, with financial eligibility being met. For some charges, we have to get confirmation from our duty counselors to say, is there a likelihood of imprisonment upon conviction? So, and just to note for everyone that's listening, so we're unable to assist in standalone traffic tickets or provincial statutes, again, unless there's a likelihood of imprisonment. And all youth are eligible to receive full representation for the criminal matters through legal aid.
That's great. Thanks, Melody. About how long does it take to find out eligibility?
That kind of, it depends. It depends on what the legal issue is, but usually the intake worker can tell the caller what the next steps are and if they are covered or whatever. But there are at times we have to get, as I said, further information from our duty counsel or our staff lawyers.
Okay, so it really depends.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So once somebody is eligible, what happens next?
Okay, so we go ahead and appoint a lawyer. So the caller will be asked if they have a preferred choice of counsel, and they don't always have that. So we will send out an offer to that lawyer. The lawyer can either accept it, reject it, or just not answer it. But we will continue that process until a lawyer is appointed.
Thanks, Melody. I appreciate that. Let's keep going on the legal aid lawyers. No matter where you live in this province, if you qualify for legal aid, there is a skilled and knowledgeable lawyer ready to take your file. Legal aid has a team of in-house staff lawyers who work on some of the most complex cases that come our way. We also have an extensive network of private practice lawyers who do criminal defense, family, and immigration cases on behalf of legal aid. These lawyers are called roster lawyers. They're our close partners in access to justice and essential to the delivery of legal services. So here to talk about our roster, who they are, and what to expect in the lawyer-client relationship is Paul Welke. Thanks for being here, Paul.
Thank you, Andy.
What's a roster lawyer?
All right, so a roster lawyer is pretty much a lawyer who works privately that takes on legal aid certificates and does work on behalf of our clients. Just on a personal basis, and I'll speak for Cam a little bit here as well. Cam and I were both roster lawyers before we joined legal aid as staffers. So I started practicing law personally around 2017 or so. And then about 4 years ago, I came on to legal aid as a staff lawyer. So that relationship between legal aid and our staff lawyers and the roster is so important just because of the work that we do for exceptionally vulnerable clientele, which is why my current position as roster relations liaison exists.
So how does the process of choosing a lawyer work? Why is choice of counsel important?
Well, around 5 or 6 years ago, we noticed that we had a large number of change of counsel applications. These are expensive, they're inefficient, and really nobody likes them because it just drags things through the courts longer than they need to go. So we decided to experiment at that point and see what we could do to bring that number down of change of counsel applications. And what we landed on, just to try it to see if it worked, was to effectively ask the client if they had a lawyer in mind that they'd like to work with. Now that is part of our intake process. We ask the client who they would like to work with. And effectively what's happened is we've noticed that there are better relationships between our clients and the lawyer that they choose. And choice of counsel has gone way down. There have been a whole bunch of other benefits that we've noticed as well. So effectively, when a client has a specific lawyer in mind, if that lawyer is on the roster and that lawyer will take the file, that's generally who they get to go with.
There's a common misconception that we see sometimes in movies and TV about legal aid lawyers. A lot of it is fueled by US television, but I want to know what it's really like, the representation at legal aid, and what clients should expect in that lawyer-client relationship.
So yeah, a lot of people think that when they get a legal aid lawyer that they're getting a bargain basement lawyer, for lack of a better word. I mean, that's just the misconception that's out there. And Cam could tell you this as well. So him and I both, when we were on the roster, when we would take a legal aid file, we wouldn't really treat it any differently than any private matters we had. So there's no real line between, a private lawyer and a legal aid lawyer. Our roster are the same people that are taking those high profile media cases, sometimes on legal aid, sometimes not. And we pride ourselves on the fact that you can't really tell the difference between a private file and a legal aid file. We do the best we can for our clients no matter what.
And what if someone does need to change lawyers? How does that work?
Effectively, what would have to happen is that client would have to call legal aid and let them know I would like a new lawyer. And then if that application is approved on our end, and very often they are, the lawyer currently on the file would have to go into court, withdraw, and then the new counsel could step up to the plate and get on the record.
Okay, that's great. So it is possible to change lawyers. Thanks for clarifying that.
Absolutely. And sometimes the relationship just doesn't work for whatever reason. And we don't really try to pass judgment there. If we can have a second chance at making that relationship work, we'll take that.
For lawyers who are interested in helping legal aid clients, how do you apply to be on the roster?
There is an application form, and we've actually got a new process that we've just started up to make sure that we're getting the right lawyers to the right clients. So they can apply by going to the roster resources section of the legal aid website, or if they were to just email rosterrelations@legalaid.ab.ca, that goes to my team, who will generally respond within a day or two and direct them to where that application is.
Thank you, Paul. Legal Aid currently has about 1,200 lawyers on our roster. And as Paul said, if you're interested in joining, please visit our website and follow through the application process. Our lawyers are currently representing about 5,000 clients in family court and child welfare cases. And with the new eligibility guidelines coming on April 1, we know that more people in Alberta are going to qualify to help deal with a family law issue. Maybe it's a divorce, a separation. And here to talk about family law services and the application process on the family side is Misha Kowalka, a staff lawyer in our family practice. Thanks for being here, Misha.
You're welcome.
Tell us first about you. What's your role at Legal Aid and how long have you been practicing?
So I am the legal services manager for the in-house staff lawyers in Edmonton who deal with family clients. I've been practicing since 1997, primarily doing family law in private practice, and I've been at Legal Aid for the past 7 years.
All right, let's talk about Legal Aid family legal services. So what types of issues do we help with?
So family legal issues or family law at Legal Aid, it has 3 primary components. One is child welfare. Then there is family disputes between parties, and then there is child representation. So child welfare matters are when, for example, the director has apprehended your children and you've been served with notice and you're going to court to fight to get your children back. And family disputes are between 2 parties. So child welfare it's you against the government, essentially, the people representing the government workers. Similar criminal law in that way, where it's you against the prosecution. With family disputes, family law, other family law, it's a dispute between 2 parties who are involved with the kids. Sorry. So it'll be 2 parents maybe who are wanting to get an order for parenting to have the kids living with them. It might involve child support or spousal support. In addition, sometimes it's grandparents who are seeking to have contact with their grandchildren. So in all of those cases, it's 2 different parties dealing with issues related to children or financial support. And then the third one is child representation. So sometimes in really high conflict cases, the court may order that the children be appointed with a lawyer, and that lawyer's job is to speak on behalf of the children They interview the children. They have very special training to know how to do that and how to present to the court what's going on from the kid's point of view.
Let's focus on one of the more common legal issues, which is divorce or a separation. Can you walk us through the process of applying to get a lawyer in this situation?
Yes, so in that situation, the client will call in and talk to an intake worker and go through the same financial eligibility questions as is the case with the criminal clients that call in that Melody talked about. With family disputes, there is a second component to it, and that is to determine service eligibility. And so we have certain rules that say what legal aid will cover in the area of family law. For example, if you are just seeking a divorce alone and there's no kids, that's not an area we would cover. But also, sometimes people want to dispute things that have no merit. They're taking positions that are unreasonable. And if there's no chance of success going to court to get what it is that you're seeking, then we might not provide a lawyer in that circumstance. But essentially, we have a team of lawyers at Legal Aid, assessment team lawyers, that review all the facts of your case and will make a determination of merit. And they'll complete a merit opinion to determine whether or not coverage should be granted. And if the determination is that coverage will be granted, then at that point it proceeds with the appointing process. As Melody had talked about, with an offer going to a lawyer, which may be a staff lawyer or it may be a lawyer on the roster.
So what about if someone has to go to family court and they don't have a lawyer? What happens then?
That is not an uncommon situation with family clients that have family disputes, family legal issues, because of the need for legal aid to do that assessment piece and determine whether or not there's merit. So it's quite common for people to be going to court for the first time after they've applied at legal aid and they don't have a lawyer appointed yet. In that case, duty counsel is available at family court and can assist with requesting an adjournment from the court. And the court understands that there's a bit of a process at legal aid, so they will grant the adjournment to a later court date to give the person time for that lawyer to be appointed.
And how can LAA assist somebody in a domestic violence situation?
With domestic violence, we have an emergency protection order program. There is an office at the courthouse on the 3rd floor in Edmonton, and I don't remember what floor in Calgary, but we have a staff lawyer that is there every day, 5 days a week. So if you are in a situation where you've been a victim of domestic violence, you will meet with that lawyer and that lawyer will help you with the application process to apply to the court for an emergency protection order.
Thank you, Misha. I notice we're about halfway through and we do want to get to questions from the audience. So again, if you do have a question for any one of our speakers about criminal defense, family law, the intake process, legal aid lawyers, please feel free to write in the Q&A. We're the only ones who can see the question. And we'll try to get to them all. We do have a number already to get to. We'll try to get to them all, but we do have sort of a packed house today. So appreciate your understanding with that. Misha, I want to stick with you. You had mentioned child welfare services. We have a question about apprehensions and wondering if the client or parent can be referred to legal aid and if they might qualify. Maybe just walk us through a little bit more about our child welfare service.
Sure. So absolutely, if your children have been apprehended, you've been served with notice of a court appearance, you then can apply to legal aid for a lawyer to be appointed for full coverage. And there's no service eligibility component for that kind of situation. So as long as you are financially eligible, you'll be approved and a lawyer can be very quickly appointed for child welfare matters.
Can duty counsel in the family court give brief legal advice?
Duty counsel and family court can give you advice of general processes and generally what the law is, but they are not your lawyer. So they don't represent you separate from the other party. So for example, let's suppose child support is an issue. Duty counsel would let both parties know that child support is payable by the person to the person who has the children living with them, for example, full-time, and the child support is based on your income and the number of children. So that's sort of general legal principles that duty counsel can explain.
Thanks, Melody. Thanks, Misha. I appreciate that. Wanted to go to Melody. We have a number of questions for Melody and our client services team about the intake process. A great question about language services. So what does someone do if they don't speak English?
If it's identified that there is a barrier with language, we do have a service that we use, and it's almost immediate. We just have to make a call and get things set up. But no, of course, if there's a language barrier, please apply, because we do have a service. You bet.
Another question for you, Melody, about court appeals and if legal aid helps with this and how the process works.
We do assist in that. Of course, there's still the financial and service eligibility. With financial, as I already explained, it is what it is. With service, with an appeal, we would have to get a letter of opinion from either the trial counsel, or if that isn't available, from one of our staff lawyers. So it's just, it may take a little bit of time, but no, we can look at providing service on that as well.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a question about the lawyer-client relationship for Paul. What do you suggest, or what is it like for someone who's never been involved in this before? It can feel very overwhelming. They've never met a lawyer before, and it's all very new. What are your recommendations to clients during that first sort of meeting and the first sort of steps into the process of meeting the lawyer and trying to understand what's going on?
Well, my first suggestion is to take a deep breath, because I recognize that we are dealing with clients, especially if it's their first time in the system, at probably one of the scariest times of their lives. So obviously, the more information that they can bring to that first meeting, the better. But really, if they don't have that much with them, we'll work with them and just let them know what the roadmap's going to look like to help them progress through their matter. So ideally, if they have some information, great. Sometimes that first meeting is just going to be the lawyer explaining things like how solicitor-client privilege works, how the solicitor-client relationship works, and next steps on the file, as well as setting realistic expectations. There are a lot of people who will assume that their first court date is their trial and that everything needs to be ready to go. I usually explain to my clients that these things move at the speed of law, which is slow. So for a criminal matter, for example, we're not going to be ready to go to trial at first appearance because we still need disclosure. We might want to have an offer and consider that. There are a whole bunch of moving pieces that need to fall into in a position before we can make any real decisions. So I think a lot of the time that's what we're doing with our first meeting with the client, is just letting them know what the roadmap looks like, and that we're doing a marathon, not a sprint here in some cases.
I think that's really good advice. We know from the courthouse, and I'll go to Cam Mitchell for this because he's there every day in Edmonton, helping out countless numbers of people. It's busy. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot going on. Cam, can you talk us through that? So when someone is facing a criminal charge and they've been summoned to court, what is your advice to the audience about how to handle that process when you are called into court, and where can they find you? What should they do when they get there?
Yeah, and coming to court when you've been charged with a criminal matter can be very stressful, very scary. I've had people show up to court and they're in tears. There's true fear in their eyes. They're worried they're going to go to jail. They're worried they're going to get a criminal record. They're worried they're going to lose their job. So the best thing that they can do is come and talk to me or one of the other duty counsel lawyers. Literally, our job is to take some of that stress away, help out, explain the system. One of my sort of favorite little things I like to say with clients is it's the lawyer's responsibility to stress. So we take that away from the clients the best we can. But leading up to that sort of first court appearance, it's never a bad idea to reach out to legal aid to see if you are eligible beforehand, because if you are able to get a lawyer, the sooner the better. And another good little tip is if you are charged, just in the first couple of days, write down everything that you remember from that incident. If a matter ever goes to trial, you're probably talking months away. If it's in Edmonton, you could be talking a year away. So it's a good idea to write everything down, get that recollection when it's fresh in your memory. And then if it goes to trial later on, you have that, you can share it with your lawyer. But yeah, if you're showing up in court and you're scared, come and talk to me or one of the other duty counsels. We'll walk you through it.
You had mentioned, Cam, that you've been practicing law for about 10 years. Why do you do this work?
Yeah, well, it's a lot of fun, but it's also incredibly rewarding. I get to work with some amazing people at Legal Aid, but I also get to meet a lot of people that are pretty amazing as the clients that I work with day to day. So what I'm able to do is apply sort of my knowledge and my experience in the law to helping out people when they're sort of a lot of times at their worst and they really need that help. So it's incredibly rewarding work in that sense, but it's also a lot of fun. I'm on my feet every day, constantly having random things thrown at me, thinking on the fly. Justice Cote, former chief of our Court of Appeal, and he once referred to the defense counsel as the fighter pilot of the bar. And I think as duty counsel lawyers, it could not be more true. We are fighter pilots. We got to be ready for whatever's thrown at us, to throw on those goggles, throw on our little leather helmet, and jump in that plane. So yeah, it's a pretty decent gig.
Thanks, Cam. We're grateful to have you down there at the Edmonton Courthouse and the other duty counsel lawyers. Legal Aid has a team of duty counsel right across Alberta, serving at every courthouse. So you can find a legal aid lawyer there when the courthouses are open. So thanks for that, Cam. Wanted to take it back to Melody in our client services and client intake team. Switching gears a little bit again back to the application process. Melody, can you tell us about applying again? So if you're a client who may have been with us before, do you see that often? And is there any different processes in terms of maybe having a balance with legal aid, or what can you tell us about that?
The application process remains the same for everybody. Insofar as having an outstanding balance with legal aid, that will not deter you from getting a lawyer if you meet financial and service eligibility. We will never, ever hold that against you. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And since you've mentioned it again, financial and service eligibility, I do think it just bears repeating. Effective on April 1, financial eligibility guidelines will change. So they're increasing from 24,456 gross up to 30,000. Financial eligibility is just one side of what you look at. Let's talk through again, what are the other things that you look at to determine if you qualify for legal aid?
Well, there's also the service eligibility, as I said, with the criminal matters. With family matters, we gather information and it is sent to our assessment team, as Misha had already discussed. With the criminal, again, some matters are automatically covered, like the indictable matters are automatically covered. And then we'll have to get confirmation on other criminal matters from the lawyers if they are, the client is indeed looking at, there's a chance or a likelihood of imprisonment upon conviction.
Okay, thanks,
Is that
Melody.
where, so, okay.
Yeah, thanks for that. There and for the audience, there's going to be and there is lots of information on the website about service eligibility as well as financial eligibility. So you can find all the information you need there. Legal Aid has a help center on the website as well. So I'd highly encourage you to go there and check for any unanswered questions that you have around qualifying for legal aid. Also asked a lot about legal aid fees. So while legal aid isn't free, it is offered at a fraction of the cost of private practice. And so there are payment plans set up. And again, all of this information is available on our website. You can go find the help center, and there's also a payments page where you can find the details there as well. So I'd encourage you to go there. I have a question about the roster lawyers. So this goes to Paul Welke, our resident former roster lawyer and now our roster liaison, asking about the legal aid tariff. So you'd be the expert on that. What is the tariff and what is the relationship with our roster team?
Okay, so the tariff is effectively how we pay the roster lawyers who do work for us. So it's a fairly large, lengthy document because it looks at all sorts of scenarios, whether it's a criminal representation certificate, a family or immigration certificate. If we're looking at appeals, it goes into how our disbursements work, so little extra things that might be added on to a file. And it also looks at hourly certificates, like when we have a roster lawyer maybe assisting Cameron in a courtroom as our second duty counsel for the day. So yeah, we do have the tariff, which is available on our roster resources section of our website as well. And that determines how our lawyers are paid. Now, as Andy has said, having a certificate lawyer with legal aid is not free. We're low cost, not no cost. It is worth mentioning, though, that we do provide some free services such as duty counsel. So anybody who goes and gets some help from Cameron or any of his team on any given day will never see a bill for that service.
Thanks, Paul. Great question about having multiple legal issues all at the same time, which can double, triple the stress. I will go to Cam for this question since you're on the front lines every day and probably see this a lot. What is your advice for those who might have a criminal matter, maybe a family matter at the same time? How do they deal with that?
Yes, and actually that is something that's not incredibly uncommon. And yes, we will be appointing lawyers on both matters. So the important thing with that is when you're talking to intake at legal aid, make sure they know about where and when your upcoming court dates are and what they're for. So if you have one court date and that's about a child custody issue, they need to know that. So then somebody like Paul can appoint a roster lawyer that's a family lawyer. But if you also have another court appearance that's coming up that's in a criminal docket courtroom, intake needs to know that. So somebody like Paul can appoint a criminal roster lawyer. So yes, we will be appointing lawyers on multiple matters, but it might be the case where you end up with different lawyers that are specialists in their own fields.
I'll ask Misha a very similar question. So you often see representing people in family law cases and you have both sides. So how does that work at Legal Aid and how do we help people in those situations?
So with family matters, sometimes people have multiple issues to deal with. So they may have gotten an emergency protection order, and now they need to go to family court to deal with parenting and the children and when the children can see the other party. And they may also maybe have child welfare involvement where maybe the children have been apprehended by child welfare and the other parent is viewed as being able to take care of the children. So then you may have an application in family court as well as in child welfare court. And you'll end up in most cases with the same lawyer dealing with all of those issues in different courts. And it'll be a different, what we call certificate. So it's like a new a separate file for each matter, but one lawyer that helps you with all of those. And if one lawyer is representing, let's say, mom, for example, because she applied first, or not necessarily, and then dad also needs a legal aid lawyer, a lawyer can be appointed for dad as well. So sometimes we have staff lawyers that represent mom, as an example, and then there would be a roster or lawyer from private practice to represent dad, but both of them, being eligible financially, would both be able to have a legal aid lawyer.
Okay, thank you, Melody. I want to clarify as well for the audience that the threshold for legal aid will increase effective April 1, 30,000 gross income for individuals. The income amounts for larger households, families between 2 and 6 people are also going to increase proportionally. So we're going to have all of this information on our website effective on April 1st. So you should be able to find everything you need there. Again, this does mean that more Albertans will be eligible for legal aid representation, so we want to make sure everything is on our website so you can find out exactly what you need. A great question for our client intake team. Melody, can you elaborate on how payments work?
Sure. So when a person calls into legal aid, the team member will have that discussion about repayment programs. Now, the minimum payment that we will set up is $20 per month. However, that doesn't mean if someone cannot make that $20 a month, that's fine. We will take minimally $5 per month. So that's the lowest payment. Did you ask about how to make payments, Andy? I'm sorry.
Yeah, tell us.
Yeah,
elaborate on
Okay.
what can you tell us about this?
Sure.
Yeah.
So payments can be set up, they can be paid at the bank. They can be set up on what's called a PAC form that we would send out. You can make credit card, like payments through your credit card. So that's what we are. But I think everyone, and there's also never interest charged on the outstanding balance. Not a lot of people realize that. So, which is good. But again, I just want to make sure that we don't expect if someone doesn't have money to live on, we aren't the first people to pay, obviously. We'll work with you. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this is we will work with you.
Thank you, Melody. And thanks everyone for all of the really great questions, and to our speakers for being here and answering all these questions for people. It's super important that we have the information you need to be able to access legal aid. Again, effective April 1, the financial eligibility guidelines will be changing, and all the information that you need about that is on our website, www.legalaid.ab.ca. And we are going to be wrapping up here in just a couple of minutes. Also wanted to remind you that a recording of this webinar will be available on our website as well. We will send a link out, and we would also be very grateful if you could take a minute or two and fill out a short survey about your experience here today. Your feedback is instrumental for us so that we can tailor these experiences to what you need and make sure that Albertans are getting the legal information that they need to be able to navigate the system. As we said, we understand that this is an extremely difficult time in your life, and we have teams of people ready to help, ready at the courthouse, people like Cam. They are there ready to assist you. Melody's team of call center intake officers ready to assist you. Paul's team of lawyers, the network of amazing roster lawyers that we have across Alberta that can serve you no matter where you live. If you qualify for legal aid, you will get a lawyer no matter where you are. And finally, with Misha and all the work you do to support families in this province, we have thousands of family files at this moment in time, thousands and thousands of people that we're helping. And so we're excited to be able to continue that work and expand our services even more. So with that, I think we will wrap up for today. I want to thank all of our guests here today. Misha Kowalka, a family practice staff lawyer, Melody Schramm, client services, our intake team, Cam Mitchell, duty counsel lawyer, criminal defense, and Paul Welke, also a criminal defense lawyer and our roster liaison. So thank you everybody so much for being here. Please keep an eye out for the survey and take a moment and let us know what you think. Let us know what other topics you want us to cover and we'd be happy to do that. We're planning for the year right now, so your feedback would be really great. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks to our speakers and have a great afternoon.